should be your phone should be put away so I can start showing you off our project for this week. Just keep your attention either on the screen or on the projector. Either works. So we're starting to talk some more about elements of design. So up until this point, it has been a lot of you guys just trying things, learning the hard way, like seeing how the program could work, how it might do sorts of things. That's just the first one or two projects that we do that with. Now it's going to be a lot more structured. We're going to break down each of the pieces into more manageable parts. And there's going to be a project that reflects some of the things that we're showing off in graphic design 1 at least. And I say we because I've started using some of Mr. Hendrix's resources. So he and I are teaching the same things, but we go about it a little bit of a different way. And you'll have access to his videos, which are a little bit more independent as compared to my Zoom rooms, which are a little bit more like what we're doing here, right? So if my Zoom room teaching is not working for you, you can always try Mr. Hendrix's route and see if that helps you. See if that helps you kind of get what we're going for here. But the biggest thing that we're going to be focusing on today is one of the elements of design, shape. And in that shape idea, we're going to be building some animals. Today, we're just going to start with the basics, and I'm going to show you some inspirational pieces as well as the Hendrix resources that you can also take advantage of. Before we get into the big of the lecture that I have for today, you'll have a new seating chart. You guys will be on Wednesday when your new seating chart arrives because it's right at that time. Remember, you can always Canvas message me things that you would like me to consider. I cannot guarantee them, but I will consider them in the creation of your next seating chart. Okay, so let's pull up the thread, talk a little bit about shape. If we go into announcements and you look at your P6 graphic design thread, you will see that there is a link right here to animal building basics. So this is project 3.1. This is the one that's due on Friday. We're exploring the elements of design focused specifically on shape. So you guys have actually already focused on line, which is the two-dimensional part of a shape. Doesn't make up a complete whole. But with the line projects and with the Monoway logo projects, you guys were both experimenting with the element of the design called line. So now we're moving into shape, which I'm sure you've heard the term before. You know what that means. But in design, the second element of design is shape, where the two-dimensional line encloses an area. You've heard me mention a polygon where it's a closed figure. That's the biggest thing about lines versus shapes, is that shapes are going to close in some way. What's tempting to hear the word shape is you want to think the mathematical ones, right? The hard edges, the squares, the pentagons, the rectangles, right? Things that you create in an algebra sort of sense or a trig sort of sense. Geometry, actually. I'll get there. So a shape can be geometric, like a circle, triangle, square, whatever. Or it can be organic. Leaves, flowers, and animals also have shapes. It's just usually when we think of a shape, we think of the more man-made creations as compared to the organic, which you'll see in this project that we're about to break down. And the last little piece of vocab on shapes is that boundaries, including lines and color, ultimately define shapes and can help emphasize an area of the page. So using your, let me give you a quick example, right? Here's my current logo. I have it converted to Skyline colors. It is a mix of geometric and organic shapes. And you can see that contrast between where I have the bee wings and the antennas, how they clash against the hexagons of the body. That is because I'm just thinking about shape in this logo, in this design, thinking about how I can use that to create some contrast and some areas of emphasis right here in the middle. So, can close out of this. Your learning goals real quick, the Illustrator shape tools, using the selection tools to make shapes. We're focusing on the Pathfinder and Shape Builder tools again, and then finally working with Phil a little bit more. So this is where you're going to start to see more of Mr. Hendrix's influence in my classroom, because this is the way that he likes to set up his pages, and I agree, it gives a lot of you guys a lot of really good information right at the start, especially talking about something called a deliverable. This is what you're going to submit to Canvas. So deliverables are the terms in the graphic design world. That is your that is the quote-unquote product that you are providing, because it's not physical, it's digital, but it still needs to be delivered. Your deliverables, using the shape tools and the Pathfinder and shape modes, you guys are going to create your own animal design. You do not have to invent an animal. You just have to take an animal's portrait or an animal's image and using the shape tools, recreate it in a way that I'm about to show you here in a second. Then in that same document, you're going to build a creature to build the animal or to be the animal's friend using the same strategies that you used beforehand. So these are the required parts of the deliverables, 8.5 by 11. You have your first shape creature, you have your second shape creature, and then the second creature must be made only out of shape tools, and tracing references need to be domain-free images. Something else Mr. Hendricks does that I really like is this work cycle. So you can see a breakdown of how I want you to be spending your time on this process. We're on day 1 currently. So just follow along with me, choose an animal to start with, plan for your creature, right? That's gonna be a majority of today. Our work days are going to be executing and refining. We're going to try some critiquing again on Friday, or maybe Thursday, depending on time. You're going to give critiques another shot, and that's your last day is critiquing and finishing your assignment, submitting by midnight that day, either a JPEG or a PNG. So you're going to be able to see Mr. Hendricks' video resources as well as some inspirational sources that he's collected. So if we look at Brad Woodard or Ty Wilkins real fast, both of these are going to be off of a site called Grain Edit. These designers both focus on using shape as a primary feature of their designs, right? You're welcome to look through as many of these as you'd like, but this is kind of something, we're not going to go this abstract with this project, but this is a direction that you could take it if you really, really wanted to, right? Because these are just shapes. This is not a horse, right? If you think about the painting by Rene Magritte, this is not a pipe, it's abstract, right? It's creating these shapes out of something that's not really there. You can also keep things nice and simple. You can do a lot of like text-based and cool looking geometric illusion stuff. We're going to be kind of going in this direction with this project, right? There's a lot of cool resources to help you get started right here in the inspirational section of the assignment. Lots of samples from Mr. Hendricks and from some of his classmates or students, as well as some industry examples. And then finally at the bottom, we'll get to a critique checklist and a rubric so that you know what you need to be focusing on for this assignment. I'll go more into detail about what each of these levels mean, from 1 point being room for improvement and then 4 points being proficient. You get graded and critiqued on the project being completed. You also get some points for correctly file naming your file, and the critique participation is also worth a point. So 10 points total on this assignment. You'll upload them here, right? The usual stuff. Okay, so let's start talking about how you can actually first get your animal and start thinking about how it's made up of shapes before we get too deep into the day. Okay, so I personally love Unsplash.com is my favorite place to get something called royalty-free or Creative Commons images, ones that you can use for free without fear of them being copywritten or you losing any of your stuff, whatever. As long as you're on Unsplash and you see them, they don't have this weird little like plus icon in the top left, they are free to use. So there's a snake, for example. I used a bird example in first period. There's another bird, right? So let's say I wanted to choose an animal. You have two different not two different, but there's a few ways of thinking about how you could choose your animal. One of them being, what's the simplest animal form that I can translate? And the second one being, what's my favorite animal that I want to kind of think about how it's made up, right? What are its pieces constructed out of? So I'm going to do a lizard, for example's sake, just generally Googling lizard on the Unsplash box, looking for an image that, as long as it doesn't have the Unsplash Plus, which I don't think this one does. As long as they don't have Unsplash Plus, they are free to use. So let's click on load more. Looking for a lizard, a good lizard here. Let's do this guy. Okay, so if you find an animal picture of something that you like, you click on it in the window and there's this big green download free button right here in the top right. You click on that, it's going to pop open a little download window of some variety. You want to click save file and then put it into a folder inside of your OneDrive. So if you go to your graphic design folder, you can make a project for this, or a folder for this whole project. So PROJ 3.1 if you wanted to, or you can call it animal shape, or you could just throw it into your OneDrive. I just like putting them into subfolders. Okay, and then just click save. And that's going to download that high-res image to your OneDrive so we can start bringing it into Adobe Illustrator. So here we are. Let me go back home real quick. Here we are in Illustrator. You guys can still be picking animals. You don't have to follow along because it's a lot of similar stuff that we've already practiced so far. We're going to create a new file, but instead of going 5 by 5 inches, we're going to click straight away on the print tab in these presets right at the top here. And we're going to choose letter. But before you click create, before you click on the blue create, we got to change our drop down right here to from the word points, change it to inches. You can also choose if you want to be landscape, which is the wide version, or portrait, which is the up and down version, horizontal versus vertical. Right, I'm gonna go horizontal for this one. I'm gonna go portrait mode. You don't have to go that way. I mean landscape mode. And the last thing I need to change is the color mode from CMYK to RGB color. It should say RGB color right here. And then we're gonna click on create. So this presents us with our artboard, stuff that we're used to, but there's a little bit more setup that I wanna do on this before I bring my animal in directly. So if you click and hold on the shape tool, and then hover over to the right-hand edge, you'll see there's this kind of tiny, really tall and skinny button with an arrow on it. If you click and hold on the shape tool. If you press that button, it's going to pop your shape tool out into this little window that you can navigate around and quickly switch between the different types of shapes, which we'll go over here in a second, right? You can very quickly switch between them by popping this little window out. And to do that, one more time, you click and hold on the shape tool and then look for this little tall and skinny button on the right hand side. And then when you click on that, it's going to pop out in another window. The other window that I want you guys to open up by clicking on the window button right here. Remember, the window button contains all of your tools in Illustrator, all in one spot, all in alphabetical order. So if you ever hear me mention, hey, pull up the info panel, or your layers panel disappears, or you need SVG interactivity, right, whatever. Click on window first, and that's going to have all the tools that you need to access. So what we're going to pull up is Pathfinder right here, as well as Align. So open up those two boxes. They should be floating just kind of loose. Oh wait, actually maybe yours probably looks like, no, not like that. Yours probably looks a little bit more like this. So with these different tabs, you see when you open up the Pathfinder window, how there's tabs on the little pop out. If you click and drag those tabs separate from one another, just like you would on Chrome or like your web browser of choice, it's going to separate that into another window. So you can have your Align panel popped out and then your Transform and Pathfinder be on another panel. Or you could have all three loose if you wanted to do that. If you ever want to put a tab back in, you just click and hold it up next to another one. You'll see this kind of faint blue happen around the edge. And then when you let go, it'll place that tab in the next thing right here. Okay, so most of you, I imagine, have chosen an animal at this point, or you at least have an animal in mind that you want to be vectorizing. When you're ready, when you have that Unsplash photo downloaded, you click on File, and then you go to Place right here. It's going to pop open the, well, this was the last place I opened something, but it's probably going to open the last folder you had. I'm going to make my way to 6th period graphic design in my OneDrive. So 2024, semester 2, 6th period graphic design. And then I'm going to go into my project 3.1 folder that has my lizard in it, right? You'll notice that there's a template box to check right here. If you click that and then click place, it's going to automatically just place it at full size, centered on the artboard, and I can't do any resizing by default. So to get around that, we're going to stick to our usual template adding method by going to File and then clicking Place again. But we're going to make sure that template box is not checked. We don't want that template box checked. Click Place. It's going to attach it to our cursor and then click. And then we're going to have to resize. So I'm holding Alt on my keyboard and scrolling to zoom out. And then I'm holding the space bar while I'm clicking and dragging to move around my artboard. And then finally, I'm holding Shift before I click and drag in order to make my lizard scale evenly. If I don't hold Shift, I can squash it to non-existence, and we don't want to do that, right? So I'm holding Shift, and I'm let going the mouse first, then the key. I'll scroll to zoom in, space bar, click, click, drag, drag, click, drag, let go of space bar, put my lizard somewhere in the white space, I'll scroll zoom out, hold shift, click and drag, make it a little bit bigger. Okay, that's looking good. That's taking up a good amount of space on my artboard here. So, same way that we've been vectorizing thus far, I'm going to add a new layer on top of the image. And then I'm going to double click in this empty space. Look on the zoom room and look at the screen. Click on this empty space next to layer 1 to turn that into a template. So we're going to double click in that empty space. Check the box that says template and click OK. All right, now, nothing we've done is new so far besides popping out a couple windows, arranging a couple more panels. Not much has changed. You might be curious, what are we actually doing for this assignment? What you're actually doing for this assignment is using only the shape tools, only your square. I'm on the locked layer. Make sure you're on the correct layer. Using only your rectangle, your rounded rectangle, your ellipse, your polygon, and your star. You are going to remake your animal out of its basic pieces. So, a couple things that makes your, a couple adjustments that I want to show you real quick. Before you get into trying to do some crazy shapes like this, like neck portion or the elbow or the claws or anything that's not a typical geometric shape, I want to show you a few tricks that the geometric shape tools have going for them. So, we know if you hold shift, it makes a perfect square or circle, but if you have a rounded rectangle, for example, if you hold shift, that's going to make, if it's small enough, it'll be a circle. But with a rounded rectangle, I have not let go of my mouse. If I press and hold my arrow keys, that's down arrow, and that's up arrow, I can change how rounded the corners of my shape are. Make it a little bit more circular. I can hold down on the keyboard to make it a little bit sharper, right? A little bit less rounded, so to speak, right? You can use the arrow keys to make adjustments on these shape tools. You can also do this with the polygon tool. If you click and drag, it's gonna, let me do it more in the center. If you click and drag, by default, it makes a hexagon. It makes a 6-sided shape. But you can use your arrow keys to add or subtract. Down's going to subtract. Up is going to add lines to your polygon. Just so you're aware of the shape tools examples. You can use the arrow keys to keep increasing. You can go all the way up until it's like a 400-sided figure, which just looks like a circle, but is actually a polygon, right? And the lowest you're going to be able to get is a triangle, 3 sides. Same thing that happens on the star tool. It's going to be by default make a 5-pointed star, but if you press the arrow key up, you add more arms. If you press the arrow key down, you take away arms, and the minimum you can have on that is 3. All right, so just a couple little quick tools to keep in mind on the shape tools. You can adjust how they're looking by default. You can do some cool effects like this too if you really wanted to. Okay, so for the actual assignment, here's what we're doing. I'm going to click on my layers panel. We'll get to some of these later in the week, but for now, just think about how the basic shapes make up your animal, right? So, great place to start is a circle for the eyes, ellipse for the eyes. Press my V key on my keyboard in order to move this circle around. I don't want to accidentally make a separate circle. Lizards also got nostrils and ear holes, so that's a couple more circles I can add here. Press V on my keyboard. These do not have to be perfect. You can, if you hold Alt and zoom in, you can grab on any of these anchor points and kind of squash them and grab on the corners and rotate them so that it's pretty close to how it would look, how it could look on your actual animal. Okay, I'm gonna add another circle for the iris or the pupil. Double click on that fill box. Remember, that's the one in the back. If you press X, that'll switch between fill and stroke. The only thing I have selected right now, the only thing with a bounding box is this circle right here. So if I double click on my fill box, that should only affect the color of that first circle. Okay. I can click on my selection tool, which is this one right up here on your toolboard, or you can press V on your keyboard. That's going to move that shape into on top of the other shape. All right. Your guys' job is just to go through and start trying to make your animal's shape out of the basic tools provided. So you might be asking, what if you need this curve? What if you're trying to do this cheek pouch on this lizard here? That you're going to use an ellipse for that. Okay. I'm going to set it to have no fill by clicking on this little slash button right here with the fill box in front. I'm going to click on my selection tool. I'm going to find out how this circle could align with the curve of the cheek situation right there, right? You see how I'm taking these two pieces right here, and I'm making it follow along that curve, and then adjusting it as necessary, making sure that it still maintains that curve there. Take my circle tool, we got a curve up here, we'll rotate that a little bit, squash that a little bit, move it around, right? Let's see what else we got. I'm seeing a little triangle from the bridge of the nose down to the mouth. So I'm going to click on my polygon tool, click and drag. It's going to make a triangle because that's the last thing I had by default. Okay, and look at how that triangle sort of becomes a nose. It's going to be a lot of overlap, and it's going to look pretty abstract while you guys are doing this. Okay, just following the lines as much as you can. Just make this a little bit longer. A little bit back here, rotate this a little bit. Try to get it to match up as much as possible. And you want to cover as much of the shape as possible. Okay, there's another, oh, that's not the tool that I need. I need the circle tool. Okay, there's a nice oblong ellipse along the jaw here. You're just building your creature out of basic shapes. You can see there's a triangle in here, there's a circle right here. Let's get that little circle point like this. All right, and it's all going to be different depending on what animal you decided to go with. Okay, I see a triangle right here. Bless you. Right, and then the process is going to be different based on what your animal looks like. But this is your job right now, is just taking these basic shapes and trying to turn them into like a puzzle piece, working backwards, covering our animal. So it's been about 30 minutes in Illustrator, and we have not saved yet. So we're going to do that right now by going to File and then Save As. And since you placed an image from somewhere in your OneDrive, it will take you back to that location automatically. It will take you straight back to that directory. You can tell because of the path right at the top of the screen here. We're in OneDrive, and then 23-24, and then second semester, and then sixth period graphic design, and then my 3.1 folder, right? I'm just going to call this 3.1 WIP, stands for work in progress, otherwise known as a WIP. And then I'm going to put my initials right at the end here. You can call it whatever you'd like, as long as you know what it is. You can leave it untitled. I highly recommend against it, or I just recommend against it, not highly recommend. But you want to save your work at some point today so you don't lose the abstract sort of animal creature situation shape that we got going on here. So, anybody have any questions on what I'm asking thus far? All right. As a reminder, you also have access to Mr. Hendrix's video. Sorry, that's the wrong one. Let me go back here. You have access to Mr. Hendrix's video if you want to take another look or see another approach to creating these animal projects. But we're going to get more into detail later in the week during our work days and stuff like that. For now, just focus on how to get the basic layout of your creature out of these basic shapes. Sound good? Any questions? All right. Go ahead and keep working. Make sure you save before the end of the day.